the topic of my presentation is whole segment processes in Dogri. Uh, uh, Before I actually talk about the contents, I would like to say that when we talk about the various phonological processes, we find that language comprises of distinctive phonological processes, because every language has a distinctive phonological system that makes use of the phonological processes. And I chose Dogri because it is one of my native languages, and it comprises of quite a many phonological processes. So I thought of unearthing the structure of Dogri language and examine the sound structure of the language. Now, the following are the contents of the presentation, where I'm going to talk chiefly about the whole segment processes in Dogri. And these comprises of germination, apprentices of insertion, deletion or elation, metathesis, substitution. I will also briefly introduce the modification types phonological processes in Dogri, chiefly nasalization and assimilation. This I have already said that language comprises of unique phonological system, and every language has a distinctive phonological system, and that makes use of various phonological processes. And knowing these processes and analyzing the words making use of these processes help in examining the sound structure of a language. Moreover, many disciplines such as psycho-neurolinguistics, historical linguistics, language acquisition, etc. deal with phonology. Although they differ in their approaches, the processes are mutual to them. So for a phonologist, it is thus essential to know them in those disciplines. Now, we will also see, before I actually talk about the various phonological processes, we'll see what are the chief categories of these phonological processes. So these phonological processes are chiefly divided into two categories: the whole segment processes and modification type processes. Now, whole segment processes operate at the level of phonemes, and these processes are those that affect the segmental structure of the word by deleting, inserting, or changing segments from one contrasting segment type to the another. On the other hand, the modification type processes basically are processes that modify segments, and these include transitional, laryngeal types, syllable-based, and articulatory. Before I talk about the various processes, let me introduce the language I'm going to unearth. So Dogri is referred to as a language of the mountains, and it belongs to the Western Indo-Aryan branch of Indo-European family, which is a very expansive group of languages. This language is chiefly spoken in the Jammu region of Jammu and Kashmir, northern Punjab, parts of Himachal Pradesh, and even in few parts of Kashmir. Of course, it's a language of the mountainous region, and it exhibits interesting features of suprasegmentals. While talking about the suprasegmentals, I'll say that Dogri has been found to have word stress and also lexical tones. There is a three-way tonal oppositional system prevalent in Dogri, and researchers are still going on in that area. But of course, tones are prevalent at the level of words, at the lexical level. And the three tones found in Dogri language, I myself have worked on that, are falling, rising, mid-tone, and a low tone. Apart from these tonal features, it also represents a number of phonological processes which we will see today. Let's talk about the whole segment processes in Dogri. The first phenomenon I'm going to talk about is germination. In words of Crystal, he states that germination is a term used in phonetics and phonology for a sequence of identical adjacent segments of a sound in the single phoneme, morpheme. So, as we know that germination refers to sequence of identical adjacent segments of a sound. So, as far as Dogri is concerned, there's a very famous work by Ujjwal Singh Bari, Dogri Phonology and Grammatical Sketch, and he says that germination is of course phonemic in Dogri. All consonants except r, sh, r and n can be germinated. So these are preceded by short vowels when germinated. In case of aspirates, only the voiceless element, that is onset, is germinated. So the germination in Dogri is established on the basis of the following oppositions. So we have some of these examples which I'll explain. These are examples from Dogri, and as we say, these are the geminate consonants towards the left hand side. It's double per, and we have a word like tappa. So here it's a you can say an instance of germination, which means stanza. And here we have, of course, since this is all, there's this contrast taking place. So we can see in the second example, it's tapa. So there's no germination, of course. And as we remove the germination, the word becomes tapa, which means to cause, to jump. Similarly, we have another word like, this is with the aspiration, the same sound, the former sound with the aspiration. So the word is chappi, which means stronghold. And when we have a single consonant, it means japi, that is recited. Then we have another geminate consonant, that is double b sound, which means labba. In Dogri we have a word labba, which means to found, while where we have a single form, it's labba, that means to find. Similarly, mukka, which means fist, and mukam, which means finish. Bagga, which means whitish, baga means flow. Then we have another word kacha, which means right, and we have kacha, which means bad. So of course we can see the contrastive element over here at the level of sounds. So a few more examples are there, like Sadi, which is called, and Sadi, which is century, Badda, which is big, Badam, which means to cause, to cut, Kami, which refers to a laborer, Kami means weaknesses, Mani is agreed, Mani is stone, and we have Rasa, which is rope, and Rasa, which is soup. Then we have another process, which is apprentices or insertion. And we have seen such processes, these processes of course taking place in various languages across the Indian subcontinent. And I also found examples of apprentices of insertion in Dogri language. So we have apprentices, I would like to explain. So what happens in a certain context, a particular segment gets added in between certain segments. And it depends upon the various categories also. It depends upon you can say, the environment where this insertion takes place. For example, in Hindi we have a word pasina, and Dogri it is parsina. That means perspiration. So this is of course the adding of r in between these two sounds, the sure vowel and the sibilant s. This is referred to as a process of excrescence, which is a part of the phonological process of apprentices of consonants. So what is happening here? The consonant is getting added instead of the vowel. So here this is one example of we can say Dogri apprentices of consonants taking place. So here the consonant r is getting added in between. Then we have another process, deletion or elision. So here we'll see that within deletion or elision we have a process called ephesis, where a segment is deleted word initially. So we can see a lot of examples I found in Dogri where a particular segment in the word initial position gets removed. So we can see the following examples. These are some examples from, these are Hindi words, and their Dogri counterparts are written over here. So the word is anaj in Dogri. This is a phonetic representation. The form is naj, which refers to grain or grains. Then achar becomes char, amrud becomes marud, athara becomes thara, inam becomes nam, ilachi becomes lachi. So the initial segment is getting deleted, and this whole process is called ephesis. We have some more examples like imarat turning to marat, imarti becomes marti, Ananda becomes Nanda, Anartha becomes Nartha, and Adhina becomes Dhina. And these are the meanings of these words. The previous mentioned examples exhibit deletion of a particular segment in initial position. We'll also see, however, that deletion takes place in word medial position also, which is referred to as instances of syncope, as in the following. So, here we can say that the vowel is getting deleted in the middle position, and this is basically referred to as process called syncope. So kapat in Hindi, in Dogri it is called kapt. Kalash becomes kalash, sabak becomes sabk, malik becomes malk. This is how the speakers of the language communicate. So when they have to say these words in Dogri, they generally remove in their actual pronunciation, because these are the phonetic transcriptions, we can say, and the surface representation, in their actual pronunciation, they actually delete the vowel in the word medial position. So this is an instance of syncope. Then we have metathesis. So as we know that metathesis is a process where there is transposition of sounds taking place, that is, one sound is moved next to the adjacent sound, and that in turn is replaced by the former sound. So such a process also takes place in Dogri, as we can see these examples. So here the word is ujar. These are all Hindi words towards the leftmost side, and there's a transposition, or you can say exchange of elements taking place. So jar becomes juar, which means to destroy. Udas becomes duas, which is sad. Udhar becomes duhar, which is lone. Utar becomes tuar, which is downs. Ukhar becomes kwar, which is uproot, and upaj becomes upay becomes uay, which is solution. And we'll see that metathesis in the context of English language is a process that generally little children make. We can see examples in English. For example, the word is, for example, ask, and the child will say ox. So this is what they do in their early years in their native, especially the native speakers of the language English. However, such a tendency has been noticed among the speakers of Dogri speakers still at a very high age also. Now in the following examples, the E segment is moved after the first sound, and the following segment next to the first will move next to E, and a schwa will be inserted along with it. Moreover, the approximants become plosives in certain cases. So as we can see, of course, there's a lot of transposition taking place in these examples, which is quite visible. And we have some more examples, like Prithvi becomes Prithvi, Kripa becomes Kirpa, Srijan becomes Sirjan, and Rig becomes Mirag. So of course, here we can say that, of course, there is this, phonological processes are interacting. Sometimes more than one process is also involved. So maybe more than one process are interacting with each other, as we can see in these examples. Then the next process is the substitution process. So here a particular sound gets substituted by the other sound, and as we can see in the examples, so the word is Nava becomes Nama, Satvi becomes Satmi, Jatra becomes Jatra, Jantra becomes Jantra, Yogya becomes Jog. Of course, there's some deletion at the end also taking place over here, and Vela becomes Bela. So as we can see, that the sound is getting substituted, and of course, as we can see, that approximants turning into plosives also happening over here. So as I said that sometimes more than one phonological process is also involved. Now, other than the whole segment processes which are prevalent in Dogri, I would also like to talk briefly about the modification type phonological processes. So we have nasalization, which is a very important part of the assimilation phonological process, and this occurs when the sound, as we articulate a word, is impacted by the upcoming nasal. Now, Ujjwal Sambari in his famous work, which is one of the works which talks about some of these phonological processes in 2001, notes that nasalization is phonemic in Dogri. So we'll see how this nasalization is phonemic. So we have some examples like we have a word like Adar. So we have which means respect in Dogri, and then if we nasalize the sound, it becomes Andar, which means intestine. We have So, which is 100. We have So, which is oath. We have Jug, which is world, and we have Jam, which is war. So nasalization, we can say that it is phonemic in Dogri. Nasalization in Dogri is not predictable when a vowel precedes or follows a nasal consonant, n or m. However, in case of n, the preceding vowel invariably is nasalized, and the following vowel for causative verbs may or may not be automatically nasalized. For example, mar is woman, mar is to strike a blow, or ram is a name, etc., where the nasalization is not perceptible. If we have some word final vowel after a nasal is automatically nasalized in the following positions. So if a word has a germinated consonant, word final vowel is nasalized, irrespective of any tone. So we have the word over here, kammi. So the phonemic, we can say the underlying representation is kammi. However, the speaker says kammi. Then we have kanve, and the word becomes kanne. Manni, and the word becomes manni in surface representation. Then we have kinna, which becomes kinna. So in the actual pronunciation, we can hear the nasalization taking place if the word has a germinated consonant. Then the final vowel, the word final vowel is nasalized. If the word,
Madam, can you conclude?
Yes, sir. 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. Yes, sir. So similarly, we have if a word final vowel after a nasal bears a low tone or a mid tone on the second syllable, the nasalization is not predictable. So as we can see in the oppositions, like na, which means to take bath, and na, should I take bath. So that is the whole, we can say, connotation. Similarly, we have a monosyllabic. If the word ends in any of the 3 nasal consonants, the preceding vowel is automatically nasalized. So we have words like kan becomes kan, kam, chan, chum, and so on. Similarly, in disyllabic words with both syllables open, with the second syllable having a nasal consonant, both vowels are nasalized. So we have dona, tama, trama, lama, and so. Then I'll just proceed further. This is the last thing, assimilation. So here, in the following words, medial in assimilation phenomena, U and U are generally changed to E, U, and assimilated with other vowels. So as we can say, the word is Vinayak, so becomes Banayak. Bhavna becomes Bhavna. Lavana becomes Luna. So again, we have 2 consonants are often made similar or assimilated as one notices in the following examples. Tattva becomes Tatta, which is bitter. Sarpa becomes Sappa, which is snake. So assimilation takes place. So we can see that Dogri exhibits a good amount of phonological processes, which of course lot of whole segment processes we can see they are visible, and even other than that, the other processes are also visible, the modification types. So if we this serves as a good amount of data also for the future generation, and of course it also acquaints the researchers and students, okay, with the changes that takes place at the level of sound structure that serves as a consequence of the whole segmental processes. So these are the references, and with that I conclude my presentation.
One thing I want to inquire. Thank you, Professor Devina, for your nice presentation. But I want to mention whether you treat all these processes diachronically or synchronically. Do you think that these are synchronic processes or diachronic processes? Because so far as the Sanskrit words are concerned, kripa, it changes in Dogri, and the process that taking place, that is historical process or diachronic process. But you have taken some examples from English. In this case, of course, it can be said that synchronic in nature. One thing, and another thing is that that is sappa, that changes to sappa, that is historical process that is in many of the Indo-Aryan languages. And another thing is this, that do you treat germination as phonetically at least, do you want to treat it as a long consonant or double consonants? And phonetically at least, there is a break between these two consonants.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Start from one syllable and the next one the another syllable. With all these things. This thing only I want to.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the observation. Yes, so while I was compiling the whole presentation, so I have also referred to Bhari's work. So generally, yes, that is true that, of course, some historical examples have been stated. That is true. And however, most of the, I've tried to compile some historical examples and even some of the examples that are presently spoken by the speakers of the language. That is true. And as far as the germination is concerned, so that is true that we can see a lot of doubling of consonants in Dogri word. So even there's one observation that of course the speakers I interacted were basically people belonging to, you know, an age group of around like 50 to between 50 to 60 years. However, the speakers who are still young, so their Dogri is now, we can say that it's a kind of Dogri Hindi mix. It's a Dogri Hindi mix. So some of these instances which I have mentioned seems to be not present in their language presently. So of course, my whole idea was to compile a work where I can document this data also, taking into account some aspects from the historical point of view also, and so that and as I explore more in the area, maybe I can add something more to the database. Thank you.
Thank you, Arundhata, for the opportunity. Well presentation, Dr. Devina. As far as I understand, Dogri is a separate language, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
It's an Indo-Aryan language, right? And I was a bit surprised to see that, you know, you have tried to draw the connections in most of the phonological processes from Hindi. Any specific reason for that? Now, if you have to go back, you have to go back to Sanskrit possibly, not from Hindi, right? And then you also mentioned that your data basically concerns the native speakers of, like, you know, around 50 or 60 years of age, where the language is, like, you know, kind of more intact than the like, you know, the people. So I wonder, you know, if you have to, you know, from the proto-form basically. Right?
Yes,
so
sir. Thank you for the,
yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the questions. So, while I was trying to work on this area, but so this was a part of actually a part of my thesis, I can say, where a part of the chapter of the thesis. So, this was an approach I actually followed, following when I was reading Bahari's book. Bari's book on phonology of Dogri. So it was stated like that the words were in Sanskrit and of course in Hindi, and the Dogri counterparts were also stated. So I just followed that approach in a very simplistic manner and thought of collecting data from the elderly group who could speak the language fluently. That was just a simple reason.
No, that is fine. Actually, you know, your comparison point should be like the protoforms or maybe Sanskrit, not Hindi. Right?
Okay, I'll keep that thing in mind, sir. Thank you so much for the input.
Yeah. Thank you.